Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
Welcome to the Washtenaw County League of Women Voters educational presentation. My name is Catherine Murau, and I'm the current president of our fine organization. The presentation tonight is entitled, How Does ICE Impact Washtenaw County? The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization. We do not support or oppose political parties or candidates. The League's mission is to educate voters and defend democracy. The League is engaged in a 2-year nationwide campaign called Unite and Rise. This initiative includes the defense of democratic institutions and due process. The League of Women Voters of the United States has issued the following statements concerning immigration. As a nonpartisan, pro-democracy organization, the League is deeply alarmed by the ongoing ICE detentions, which too often fly in the face of due process and other fundamental rights. These actions undermine the democratic values of fairness, equal treatment under the law, and government transparency and accountability. The League supports due process for all persons, including the right to a fair hearing, right to counsel, right of appeal, and right to humane treatment. The League does not support deporting undocumented immigrants who have no history of major and/or violent criminal activity. Our moderator this evening will be League member Sue Smith. She will introduce the members of the panel and will explain this evening's format. Sue?
Thanks, Catherine, and good evening, everybody. And it's great to have so many folks here to hear about this important topic. As Catherine mentioned, this is an educational presentation on how does ICE impact Washtenaw County. Our panel this evening consists of 4 panelists. Washtenaw County Commissioner Andy LaBarre, Washtenaw County Sheriff Alicia Dyer, who is on her way, and we will hear from her when she gets here. Melanie Harner, co-founder of Washtenaw Interfaith Coalition for Immigrant Rights, and immigration lawyer Cecily Cordova. The panelists will give their perspective on our topic this evening. How does ICE impact Washtenaw County? The format will be as follows. Each panelist will have 3 minutes to introduce themselves and describe their organization. And then we'll have an additional 5 minutes after that to give their perspective on tonight's topic. 30 seconds before the end of their 3-minute introduction and 30 seconds before the end of their 5-minute perspective on the topic, our lead timer will hold up the 30-second sign. You know, the league is, we're really picky about timing. When the stated time is up, the timer will hold up the stop sign. Please limit your remarks to the allotted time. We will start with Washtenaw County Commissioner Andy LaBarre, followed by the Sheriff when she gets here, then Melanie Harner from WICIR, and then finally Cecily Cordova. There will be an opportunity to ask questions of the panelists at the end of the presentations. In order to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to be heard, we will use the following procedure for audience questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand and a league member will come to you with a mic. Please wait until I recognize you before speaking. You will have up to 2 minutes to ask your question. 30 seconds before the end of your 2 minutes, our league timer will hold up the 30 seconds. You know, I always thought we should have a long handle with a crook, you know, they used to do like. You're done. And then our lead timer will hold up the 30-second sign, and when your 2 minutes is up, the timer will hold up the stop sign. I will recognize the panelist who wants to answer the question. Members of the audience may speak only once until everyone else who wishes to speak has had the opportunity to do so. And the meeting will conclude no later than 7:30. The library requires everyone to be out of this room by 7:45 because the library closes at 8. I had to sign my name in blood to make sure that you'd be out of here. Okay, we will start then with Commissioner LaBar.
Thank you, Sue. Good to be with you. My name is Andy LaBar. I'm a member of the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners. I think I've got 3 minutes to put some context on the organization and then 5 minutes on the...
Just 3 minutes to start with, and then we'll come back to you later.
Could you stand up so we can only...
Happy to, yes. Good evening, Andy LaBar. I'm a member of the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners. In a nutshell, county government is the unit of government in the state of Michigan that is primarily focused on human services. We tend to chop up state level services at the county in a unit that is large enough to cover the area, obviously, but small enough to navigate. And in the context of tonight's discussion, we're talking a lot about mental health services, public health services, economic assistance, all those sort of nexus points where individuals in need of service from county government interact with county government. That is where we're seeing some really detrimental impacts to what's going on with ICE. Primarily, as I suspect our other panelists will get to, there's a chilling effect that is really instilling fear into these individuals who are in need of these services. So for instance, when you're in need of a mental health service, perhaps you or someone you love is in crisis, but you know that any interaction with a government service could mean deportation action or something nefarious like that. That's a massive sort of problem in terms of which should I defer to? The need for mental health service in an emergency situation or risking my status here in this country? Same thing plays out in public health. That should terrify all of us just in the context of things like, are folks getting the immunizations they need? Are they reporting communicable diseases in ways that they should? Another thing to think about is it's not just the individuals who are needed the services, it's also the families around them, the communities around them. When you are not willing to go to high school because you worry your parents will be deported while you're gone, that's a you problem, that's a them problem, that's a we problem. And so we're seeing all of this in Washtenaw County right now, and unfortunately, much of the data on it is pretty negligent in terms of having a lot of it, having it crisp and ready, because there's so much chilling effect that's going on, so much fear and so much hesitancy to talk. Just to wind down my remarks here before we go on, I was on the board, the only member who was on during the first 2 years of the Trump administration. Back then, we were told we need to be loud and supportive of our immigrants in this community. It's been a sea change and a sea change of fear and quietness and really detrimental impacts that we've seen over the last 9 months now. Thanks.
Okay, so thank you, Commissioner. So Ms. Horner, you're going to just give us up to 3 minutes on you and your organization, and we'll have later your perspective.
I will stand, it doesn't make much of a difference. So first of all, I want to say thank you for having me. Again, my name is Melanie. I'm one of the co-founders of WICIR. Washtenaw County is one big acronym, so we are one as well. Washtenaw Interfaith Coalition for Immigrant Rights is a mouthful. So the community knows us as WICIR. If you hear everything today and you wonder more about WICIR, we are wicir.org. There is a sign-up sheet as well if you want to be added to our mailing list and hear more about WICIR doings from our newsletter, or if you want to sign up and possibly volunteer, that sign-up sheet is here as well. So as one of the co-founders, we've unfortunately been in existence for almost close to 18 years. I was really hoping, when I say that, I'm like, oh my gosh, 18 years. And it's now needed more than ever, honestly. We've had ebbs and flows in immigration needs in Washtenaw County for, since we've started, but it's urgent, and that is what we've always formed ourselves around, is urgent response. We've done a lot of different things over the years, but urgent response has always been our main goal for the community. For the affected community, we offer resources. We don't offer advice. We don't tell people what to do. We have a phone that people can call and say, I need this, I need that. If it's legal resources, We can help pay for a consultation to talk to a lawyer, sometimes a Spanish-speaking lawyer. We can help get an interpreter to connect with an English-speaking lawyer, and they can hear what their options are before they make their next move in regards to something that could, change their life forever or their family's life. We offer rides to court, locally and to immigration court. Over the years, we've had lots of families that have said, no, I can get somebody to drive. That's not happening so much anymore. And our biggest request now, and have always been, I would say, but the intensity and just the frequency of the requests we're getting now is help for basic shelter needs. Because work is disappearing, people are scared to go to work. Their boss may have been detained and may have been deported. They don't have that job anymore. There's all kinds of reasons why people are needing the assistance, and I can go into that and the impact. But we are getting lots of requests. And then the other piece that we're getting more requests on now that we are, again, needing to spend money on is departing with dignity. Departing with dignity is just what it says. People are departing with their own dignity. They're departing when they want to go, with who they want to go, and where they want to go, before they get kidnapped and maybe dropped off in a country that's not even their own. So they're making those decisions. So think about if you were many people have the privilege to go on a vacation. What do you have to do for all the pieces you need to go on an international vacation? Those are lots of things we're taking care of right now. Thank you.
Ms. Cordova?
Okay. Good evening. My name is Cecily Cordovilla. Good to be with you. It's a Monday evening. You're sharing time with me, and I'm sharing time with you. Great to be in good company. So thanks for spending time with us. I am an immigration attorney here in town. My office is by the mall, by the stadium, more or less. It's just me and one other attorney, so we're pretty small. We mostly focus on humanitarian immigration, which is kind of like asylum, refugees, other kind of humanitarian-based immigration benefits, family immigration, and like removal defense. So we go to court all over the country, sometimes virtually, sometimes in person. Lots of traveling these days. Recently, we're having to be more involved in federal court, which is something that's new to me, so wish me luck. I've never done that before, and I'm having to go in blind with different procedures for a writ of habeas corpus, mandamus, trying to force the government to follow our own law. So it's been an interesting past couple of months for us in terms of trying to learn how to do these things, but the work has been endless. And I don't kind of operate in a bubble of just the legal world. I am so grateful to have Melanie as a leader in our community. We were just talking, Melanie is steadfast, sleepless, and deserves so much appreciation in our community. So thank you. So I volunteer with WICIR. I'm on the urgent response line as the legal listener most of the time, and I'm grateful to be able to do that. And I also am a Unitarian Universalist. We have an immigration group there where we aim to educate, advocate, and act. So we also raise funds for the Return with Dignity or Depart with Dignity. We're calling it different things. It's the same stuff. Refugee resettlement, and mutual aid. Mutual aid has been our biggest focus lately, as Melanie mentioned. Rent, just making sure people are fed, have food, and a place to live these days after a big immigration detention event has been something that we've been working on. So that's kind of who I am, what I've been doing lately. We'll get into more details later, but that's the gist of it. So thank you.
Thank you and welcome, Sheriff. I know you just walked in, but is your mic working?
Yes.
We're spending 3 minutes talking about the organization, and then we'll come back in a few minutes later and give each of you an opportunity to talk about how ICE has impacted the county.
Gotcha. All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Alicia Dyer. I am the Sheriff of Washtenaw County, for anyone that doesn't know me. And a little bit about the Sheriff's Office. We are responsible for the jail, contract policing, dispatch and emergency services in our county, as well as reentry, community engagement, and then community corrections, which is our pretrial services for our courts. It has been, a really unfortunate climate as we're following the issues surrounding immigration, and something that we did at the Sheriff's Office is we have held very strong on not entering into any 287G agreements, as well as ensured that we are not working or cooperating with immigration on traffic stops or in the jail on detainers, in which we can get into a bit more. But I think it's really important that there's so many people in the room. And I'm also really, I will say the one thing I've learned so far in this space around this issue is it is because of our community that we are able to come together and organize to figure out how to support immigrant communities. But it's also because of you all in our greater community that I as sheriff can even take this stance that I'm taking. If I was in another county, it might look very differently, or it probably wouldn't have got elected, I guess, either. But I know what I'm doing is right because of you all and because of the voters that made it very clear what they want Washtenaw County to do and not to do. So I thank League of Women Voters, as well as you all for being here today, and apologies for my tardiness.
That's perfectly all right. Okay, thank you for telling us a little bit about yourself and your organizations, and now we'll start back with Commissioner LaBarre. Could you talk a little bit more about how immigration has affected the county from the county board's perspective?
I think in a nutshell, it's had a stifling effect in terms of folks who are looking to access services, as I said earlier. In many instances, these are folks who are in a somewhat tenuous circumstance in their lives and are in need of, in some cases, pretty basic things like food and shelter and other basic services. And so when there's punitive action associated with seeking them, that obviously has a chilling effect. ICE has been acutely detrimental to Washtenaw County because in 2017 we became a welcoming county. You'll hear this also referred to as a sanctuary county. In essence, we said it's county policy that we would only comply with any federal immigration action to the extent that we were made by court order to comply. And the hope there was obviously that we wouldn't be taken in as sort of a tool of the federal government in use of a punitive action like that. And I want to thank the sheriff because she's taken that policy and actually made it stronger, which I appreciate. But since that point, we've had the attention of the feds, and this April they subpoenaed us and said, one, you need to hand over your I-9 forms as an employer for all your employees, and two, you need to provide us, the federal government, with all the documentation that you, the county, collect for your county ID program. County ID program was started in 2014. It allows virtually anybody to be able to get a Washtenaw County ID to access services that would take that ID. It's a good thing if you're a human being. It's the right thing to do if you're a community member. And it's something that ICE has zero business in. Now, I think they asked for those two things in tandem on purpose. I think they thought we would say no to both, and then they would say, Judge, Washtenaw County isn't complying with the I-9 request, and we think as an employer they have a legal right, they have to provide that to the feds. And you see they're not complying with what information they gather on the county ID program. Because we complied with the first and did not with the second, right now we're sort of in limbo. We've retained counsel from out in DC, counsel that's a pretty powerful firm engaged against the administration in a number of cases, but we're sort of in the dark now. We don't know what they'll be doing. So we're left to deal with the detrimental impact of folks not getting services, along with some of the funding and policy changes that have had at the federal level. We have a $7 million hole coming in our local homelessness services. I was talking to Mel about this coming in. That will impact folks with any number of statuses and folks who think that they have no role to play in this issue. So there's some real serious things happening. The county is trying to triage it as best we can, but so far not so good. And we're hopeful to get some legal wins and advice on a number of things. We're hopeful to fight off ICE on the county ID program, but right now it's a dark spot. But thanks.
Okay, thank you. Sheriff?
So I will expand on that a little bit from the sheriff's office side, and we were able to ensure that we held strong on our policies at the sheriff's office. But then also, I don't know if you all are on Reddit, but there was a letter that ICE produced to us that now, because of FOIA, is on Reddit. That basically what they did is they basically threatened us, saying that we were obstructing because we were not cooperating with them, and we also were not honoring their voluntary detainer request, which are voluntary. They are not signed by a judge. We do not have to honor them. They were very unhappy. They gave us this letter. We obviously talked to our own counsel. There is nothing requiring a sheriff's office to cooperate with ICE on these detainers. They are not signed by an actual judge. But because of that, obviously, they resorted to these tactics. And I'll just say, as a law enforcement officer, not that ICE is like local police, but law enforcement tactics more broadly, I saw so many similarities around, they are making it sound like you don't have an option to say no, right? And so the way that they presented this letter to us was, you are not complying with our requests, and because of that, we are going to take action. None of the action that they were taking was going to impact us at all, except one of my detectives that had federal clearance that was doing child trafficking cases. They didn't want him doing that anymore. Well, it's fine. He can do the child trafficking investigations on his own through our county authority. We don't need to work on the federal side. But I thought it was really interesting because it was very telling that they are so mad that we won't cooperate on these detainers that aren't signed by a judge, that they're willing to compromise child trafficking investigations. And so I thought that was telling in general. It just speaks to the environment. And I know some folks that work in the federal government that have since left the federal government because immigration and HSI, there used to be the enforcement removal operations arm, used to be very separate from the HSI side. HSI used to focus a lot on cybercrime, not so much on removal or immigration, and they have really melded under this current national climate and administration. And so what that means is, one, who's looking at our cybercrime and the cases that are actually just very serious that are criminal, regardless of immigration status. But two, I have talked to people that have since left because they don't like where the direction was going. And they have reported that there are quotas. They are literally telling agents across the country, across all the field offices, that if you don't get a certain number of arrests, then you are going to be penalized or you'll be incentivized depending on how many numbers you get. And when you give quotas to any law enforcement officer, it's never a good thing, unless it's like quota for being kind or, But to tell them that they have to make this many arrests, you just created pressure on rank and file agents across our country that this is all that matters. Like, get as many people as possible. So you see, they're not going after this narrative that they're only going after people that have committed a crime, etc. It's just not true. I think we all know that in this room. But regardless whether someone committed a crime or not in this country, you are innocent until proven guilty. And what these detainers do is they also try to take that away, which is why we are refusing to work with them. I think the impact we're seeing in law enforcement from a road patrol side is we've had people afraid to call 911. There was a family that was out in Scio that lost a loved one that was in hospice care. They were afraid to tell their family members to come say goodbye because they knew that the police were going to be responding, and they were scared, like, if the family members were going to be safe. And I've had students reach out, whether visas, people that are here legally, people with green cards, people that are undocumented. This is affecting everybody. And it is really hurting our first responders who are not cooperating, but people don't know who's who, people are scared, and people also have a distrust in law enforcement, which we have been working so hard to correct. So what this climate is doing is it's taking us backwards. People are now more afraid. I've had people send me photos of my deputies asking, is this really your deputies? And I've been able to confirm. But the fact that people are that afraid, and the fact that the tactics they are using are tactics that we don't use, we have worked so hard with reform, de-escalation, body cameras, badges. I mean, they're giving us all a bad name, and they're being very, very harmful to our community. And so we are working really hard to continue to prove to people that we are not going to be working with them, nor do we want to be identified with them either.
Thank you. Ms. Turner?
First, is this on? Thank you. Okay. First of all, I just want to reiterate what Commissioner LaBarre said earlier, just the fact that we're able to do this, and what Sheriff Dyer was saying as well, because there's a lot of counties that WICIR wouldn't have been able to exist for 18 years, or close to 18 years, and continue to get donations and continue to get some more support from the documented citizen resident community to help their neighbors, their immigrant neighbors. So I just want to reiterate that as well. So unfortunately, people who know me know that I don't bite my tongue, I don't sugarcoat things. It's bad. It is really bad out there. And I've had people, and I think, maybe people don't really know. I've had people say, oh my gosh, ICE really is taking people like I see on the news. I've seen that on social media posts, and if anyone's confused, it happens on a regular basis. So imagine you wake up in the morning and your day consists of, you need to take your daughter to work, to school, then you need to go to work, and then on the way home you need to stop and get your medication for your loved one who can't get out, who's home, and then you might want to go to mass, you might want to go to church that night. You have to get up, check your chats, the local chats that we're all on. We have to see where ICE is at. Can anybody tell me if ICE is on Washtenaw? Is there anybody who's driven by Sam's Club to see if ICE is sitting there where they usually are? Can anybody see if ICE is on the east side of Ipsy? I have to go on a different route to work today. I myself have been late to work. I'm a school social worker. I had to tell my boss one day, I was supposed to meet with 2 supervisors. One, I did not feel comfortable to say that to. The other, I said I had to take a detour because my regular route included ICE stops from the chats that I had. So I had to take a detour. The detour I took wound up in construction. I got to work late. That's minor for me, but for a lot of people to go throughout their day, people are not doing their daily activities. And I just want to make sure people are really aware that this is on a daily basis. It happens Monday through Sunday. People say, are they really active on the weekends? Yes, they are. I know 6 people personally myself that have been taken within the last month. I know 3 guys who got taken on Friday. Another gentleman got taken the week before that I know. He has multiple children. And so the profile that they are continuing to do is taking people who are on their way to work. What we do know that a woman was taken who has children. That is impacting the schools. So WICIR is in communication with the schools and how it's impacting the schools. So not only daily activities of the adults, but then are the children getting to school? So we've had to put out, one of the things I did mention is that WICIR puts out alerts and helps to spread the word if ICE is active in town, if we know there's a specific site. So that will keep kids home from school. We have a lot of students who go to charter schools. We have a lot of families who go maybe school of choice. And we're lucky that people have that freedom to do that in Washtenaw County, thank goodness, right? But at the same time, to drive your daughter or your son to school is putting you and your family at risk. So do they stay home? Yep. If they're in kindergarten, are they missing, their foundational skills? Yep. If they're in high school, are they missing the exam that they might have needed for that AP class? Yep. So there's lots of ways that so many people are impacted, and I think we hear about the individual situations, but I don't know if, people think about the broad factor for a whole family. Then add to that the local economy. I was at a restaurant I won't name recently, and they ran out of plates. And we were done. We were going to get dessert, and she said, well, you can get something that's in a bowl. And I was like, okay. And I said, did you guys run out of... And I already knew it was snowing because it was a Saturday. And we had ice active that whole week. And I had friends that were taking the day before. And I said, did you guys run out of plates? And she's like, yeah, we don't have enough clean plates. So the economy is being hit in so many ways. So please think about that in the ways that you vote going forward.
Ms. Cadovio?
So, in terms of the legal changes that have been impacting our local community, there are numerous legal changes. I'll try not to give you like a whole law course, but just to name a few. From 1997 until earlier this year, our bond laws have been interpreted the same way consistently. And basically it was, such that anybody that had been here for more than 2 years that wasn't caught within 100 miles of a border, this is a paraphrasing of the law, they would be eligible for bond if they were detained. That's no longer the case. Only people that entered the United States with a visa are eligible for bond from now on. So if you think about what does that mean for people? Anyone that is detained and people that are here lawfully, that have pending asylum applications, pending residency applications, that have always had work authorization while they're here, they're being detained for no reason, are being forced to stay detained while their cases are being processed. And you're thinking, oh, well, how long does that take? Well, my client that was detained the day before my birthday on September 18th, her her trial will be on December 29th. She will be detained until December 29th. What happens around the 29th? Everybody wants to be on vacation. So when that judge says, you know what, I'm going to head off to Colorado with my family, I'm not going to work those days, that means she's getting kicked out. This is what I'm expecting and what I've explained to her. Until March, April, May, she could be detained for up to a year. And there's nothing I can do about this young lady. She entered the United States lawfully with permission on a plane. Within 3 months of entering the United States, we applied for her asylum case. She's from Nicaragua. She experienced political persecution. She was actually beat with a bat and they broke her arm. Her case is a slam dunk case. And yet I can't get her out on bond. She will be up in Baldwin, Michigan, probably until the middle of next year, especially when the government appeals, and that takes time as well. So that's been the change that's impacted the most amount of people. It's really inflicted the most amount of fear in people because you think to yourself, well, what are my kids going to do while I'm detained this whole time? How long is it going to take for me to get deported? Also on September 18th, I had 2 other clients that were detained that day. They were driving down Michigan Avenue. They had applied for asylum. They'd always gone to their hearings. They had a lawyer. It's me. They had work authorization. They had a driver's license. They had a really nice truck. And anybody that drove down Michigan Avenue for 5 days afterwards saw that truck on the side of the road with the windows being broken into and the rain coming in on them because it rained that morning. They were just driving to work. They were at a stop sign. There was rain on the windows. It was very early. So I think it was a stoplight, actually. It was very early. So they couldn't see what was around them all that well. And suddenly, the windows are broken in. And they're like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And the wife called me while it was happening. And I hear her screaming. And I hear her window, shh. And she's like, they have my husband on the ground. What do I do? What do I do? She didn't know who was there. They didn't identify themselves. They weren't in a marked car. They weren't identifying themselves with any kind of uniform. And next thing she knows, he's on the ground surrounded by glass. And she was next to go. So if you imagine that kind of fear, knowing that that can happen to you anytime you go out, anytime you go to work, because these people were just going to work. And then you're stuck. Those people still haven't been deported, but despite accepting a deportation order 13 days ago, more or less, they just gave up. They said, we don't want to be here anymore. Despite that, they're still up there in Baldwin, and I don't know when they will be deported. And I think that the speed at which people are deported is part of the way to instill fear in people. Well, you're just going to be trapped up there, and it's cold, and the food is so little. There's so little food, and you have to be constantly bothering everyone you know. Can you put money on my phone book? Can you put money on my books for my commissary? Can you call the lawyer and ask her when this is going to happen? Can you bring me my passport? Can you bring me a bag? Can you send my things to my country? They're just living in constant fear of being detained and not knowing when they're going to be released. I had some really good stories, not good, but depictions of how this has impacted individuals. But I will just kind of reiterate what Melanie said. It's a daily anxiety. It's a constant stress and trauma. I'm not a doctor. I'm a juris doctor, but not a medical doctor, to know how this is impacting everyone's health, mental health, physical health, and the kids. I just think about how this constant state of stress and anxiety is going to last decades.
Okay, thank you to the panelists, and now there's an opportunity for people in the audience to ask a question. I would just remind you, you have up until 2 minutes. We have our timers here who will let you know if 30 seconds before the end of the 2 minutes, and then when the 2 minutes is up. And we have a person with a mic who comes around, and here's our first question.
Hi, I'm Barbara, and I'm wondering what coordination, if any, are you able to work out with the City of Ann Arbor? What I heard was a statement that said they were welcoming, but they were sort of giving in, and that they no longer think of themselves as the City of Ann Arbor as a sanctuary city. Does that cause more concern or less help that you might want to get?
Who would like to speak to that? The sheriff or?
So I think part of the way that people are framing things is because the idea, if you say we are a sanctuary county or a sanctuary city, the idea is we don't want to send an impression that there's never people harmed by ICE here. And as we've talked about today, ICE for years has been operating. We can't stop ICE from coming into the county or the city, regardless if it's a sanctuary county or city. I think that the language when people say welcoming is to be more accurate, that city leadership wants to be welcoming, county leadership wants to be welcoming, the sheriff's office is not going to be working with them and is welcoming, but because they're saying welcoming does not mean that they're working with, if that makes any sense. I just think that people started changing that language because they didn't want to give a false impression that if you come here, they're never here. Because we also can't control what they do, and Chicago is really battling this right now. And my heart goes out to the people there, the leadership there. I've been following what's going on with Brandon Johnson and how he's handling the situation. So I don't want to speak for Ann Arbor, but that is what I have gauged from the situation, and everything that I have heard is they are very much in alignment with ensuring that they are not working with or cooperating or assisting immigration. And I don't know if Commissioner LeVar wants to speak on it.
Sure. Same relative answer. I think it's a linguistics issue. I think what is different this time around is that, forgive me, Trump 2.0 is sort of like in Jurassic Park where the velociraptor learns to start opening up the kitchen door and stuff. They're smarter, they're faster, and they're using issues like uncertainty and speed to their political benefit. And so I think places like Ann Arbor are trying to adapt and accommodate to that reality and say essentially, you are welcome here, but we're not going to try and call ourselves a sanctuary city the same way we might have in 2017, because we know it puts a target on our back. And the county to some degree has had to go through some of that too, because again, it's not a push to be bold and loud and support as much as to be supportive in strategic ways that are tactically wise. And just the issue of communication is another, because I think we're in a different world with FOIA and with a federal government that seems to be weaponized against us.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Here comes another question, sir.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to come here tonight. Really powerful stories. One of the other ways, an additional way to tell the story and to simply understand what's going on is numbers, right? So I'm wondering, is it possible, even possible, to maintain a database on how many detentions and raids there have been in Washington County, and is anybody trying to do that?
Who would be able to answer that question about whether anybody's keeping track of the number of detentions? Go ahead, Ms. Arn.
So I will try and speak to that. I will say, in regards to any data, WICIR has maintained since we've been in existence, and it is very real now about how we keep our data and how much data we keep and what is connected with that. And as Commissioner Lamar talked about earlier, the whole I-9 and Washtenaw County ID is a perfect example of that. So, and we are 501c3, so, I mean, things could happen with that. Having said that, we are trying to coordinate with other, I'll say, entities in Washtenaw County to see who can best keep that data. Like I said, I'm on many chats. I mean, when the detainments happen or when the stops happen, we know where ICE was and 3 guys were taken. We have that information, but beyond that, then we don't necessarily know where they were taken. We don't know then what happens beyond that unless we're in contact with their families. So there is, I will say there's more conversation now happening about that because numbers are powerful. And definitely the frequency and the intensity is, 100-fold compared to, 1.0 administration. So thank you for that question.
Couple questions in the back. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for...
We need to have you on the mic in order for it to be part of the recording, please.
All right.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for coming out here and telling these stories. I was expecting to hear that it was going to be bad. I was not expecting to be shaking with rage by the end of it. What can we do to help protect our neighbors?
Anybody answer to that?
So what I will say is we have a really important resource here, and that is WICIR. And WICIR needs funding to be able to do the work that they do. And so for those that are able, I think donating to WICIR is really important. So that way they can continue to do the work. And I can say that I know it's always awkward asking for money, but that is really important because they do financial assistance for families. They're able to do a lot of work with figuring out like how to get assistance for people's children, food, rent. All these things are really important, and WICIR's been doing it for years. So that is a resource we do have. And the other thing I would say is making sure that if you don't have the ability to donate your, financially, your time, I think that, volunteering to assist WICIR, I don't want to speak for WICIR, but that's always helpful too. And then making sure you're watching what's going on and being mindful. And for those that have the privilege of not being as afraid of law enforcement structures and government, so for those that have status, don't forget that you can FOIA ICE, you can complain to ICE. They are still a government structure, And whether they take it seriously, I don't know what their procedures are, but I always tell people it is important to remember that. There are still people within that structure of federal government. And so making sure that you're continuing to document and complain in the ways that you can is also, I believe, still useful in this time period. Even if the leadership right now doesn't do anything about it, it at least creates a paper trail. And so I think that's something I just want to shout out to.
Thank you.
If I could add one more thing to that, or a couple more things to that quickly. Just as a neighbor, you said, how can we help our neighbors? If you have children that go to local schools, grandkids that go to local schools, and you're talking with your neighbors, maybe you don't have kids, but your neighbors, they have kids that go to local schools, ask them, do you guys know what the policy is in the local school? What is your school doing to help the immigrant families? Because I promise you, there are immigrant families in every school. There are some maybe more affected than others, but they are in all the schools across the county. And so ask that question. And so it's not just ourselves. It's not just these entities up here that are asking, but it's, the PTA that's asking as well, or whatever that group is. And I would also say if you're a business owner, there's things that you can do as a business owner. You can put signs up, make sure that people know that immigrants are welcome, and there's other things that you can talk to me about that later if you're a business owner, or what you can do. And then also just, again, like I said, there's lots of people who cannot go out. I go on a regular basis, go shopping for friends of mine and deliver things to them. If you're in a capacity, maybe, in your neighborhood, in your church, whatever, civic organization, I don't want to speak for this, you guys can organize things and get in contact and see where some rides or deliveries may be needed.
I just add real quick to that also, you can push your local and state officials to do what they can at their levels. So things like at the county, you can encourage us to spend money as it relates to nonprofits that have relationships within these communities and have a bit more flexibility with unencumbered funds. So where the feds can't touch money or can't shape it, urge us to be bold in those instances where we can sort of be policy leaders urge us to be bold there as well.
Okay.
Can I add something?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, we all have an answer to this. You got us riled up. So, not that I don't want all the money to go to WICIR. WICIR does need your money. But there's another organization in the state of Michigan that serves as a legal resource, the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center. And the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center for many years has been the agency that represented almost all unaccompanied children in the United States. Like unaccompanied children, there are children here that have no one. Maybe they're staying with like a distant cousin or something like this, but their parents or grandparents or siblings are not here. And the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center has been representing them without cost by the use of grants for years, which what that meant was all the attorneys said, oh, you should just go to Merck, it's free. And then we don't know how to do it. It involves family court. I don't know how to do anything in family court. Don't call me for that. I can't help you with your divorce. But I don't know how to do things in family court. So all the attorneys are trying to learn how to do something that Merck has been able to do for decades seamlessly, or a decade maybe, seamlessly. So I just want to give you like a picture in your head. If 300 people were to donate $500, you say, okay, instead of Christmas gifts this year, instead of half of our Christmas gifts this year, we're going to donate $500 to Merck. They could hire a lawyer that could work in the state of Michigan and start representing those kids again because all those grants were canceled. And you think, what does that mean? I watched a 7-year-old on court and in court the other day entirely alone, no one accompanying him. 7 years old, he barely fit in the chair. He was playing on his tablet the whole time and no one cared because what are you going to say to him? And the judge was like, okay, Miguel, well, we'll see you back in March, and if you don't come back, I have to order you deported, okay? He doesn't know what that means. He's 7 years old, and he was there alone. So imagine, $500. You know 300 people that would donate $500. I know you do. I think we can make that happen.
Okay, well, there are a lot of questions. Marianne, you have, okay, that person And we're gonna have to start doing year second, year third, year fourth. Okay, back there.
Hi, my name's Jordan Here. I'm a reporter with MLive and the Ann Arbor News. This question is more for the sheriff, but if anybody else has insight, is there any indication or I don't want to fear of law enforcement that we're going to start seeing what's happening in Chicago happen in Washtenaw County?
If you would have asked me that 4 months ago, I might have said, no, not a chance. You know, we're a smaller community. If anything, they would be Detroit, Grand Rapids. I still think that that's true. I think that he's clearly going after big cities as much as possible. I do think we have to be prepared. You know, this climate, and I don't put anything past the national, the administration right now. And so we have really looked internally on how we would handle that. We have prepared. I have talked with folks in Chicago because they are really laying a roadmap that I think is really useful for everyone to follow around some of the ways that they are pushing back on the extreme overstep and you know, arguably illegal actions that they're taking. And so, you know, I am very confident that we here in Washtenaw County can prepare for that. I'm hoping that doesn't happen. But if it does, you know, it is where it's going to be really important to work with local and state leaders. And it's also even more important that we really rely on these mutual aid networks like WICIR and MRC, and MIRA does policy as well. And community support networks, it's going to be really huge because we are in very, very troubling times with what we're seeing happen from the national level. And I've been in spaces with folks that were around last time this happened that were in federal leadership, and they don't know, they're not sure what to do in some of these situations. This is build a plane while you're flying. It reminds me much of, in a very different way, but no one, you know, everyone had to figure out what to do during the pandemic in the beginning. And I feel like that is what Chicago is doing on this issue right now. And so I think it's really important that we learn from that and keep our eye on what's going on there.
Okay, who is number two?
Oh, 1 second.
Sue,
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
one other, just quick follow-up to that. I would certainly defer to the sheriff's assessment here. I will say, 3 months ago, I think, there was a list put forward from the administration of sanctuary communities, and we were on it. And so I think this is a very online president. This is a president who gets a lot of news from sort of non-traditional sources. And so I think avenues where he sees something and then orders something to happen are just vastly different than anything else we've been worried about. So I share the sheriff's assessment that we might not be top of the list, but I don't think you should take that opportunity or that possibility off the table.
Okay, number two, yes, she was number two.
Wanted a clarification of MRC. Can you tell me what the words are in the letter so we can get it down?
Yes, that was Michigan Immigrant Rights Center.
And sorry to keep jumping in, but the county has funded MRC since 2017. We fund them directly just to highlight the point that they can take funds from lots of places and do lots of flexible things with it.
Okay, number three. Yes, he was number three.
Yeah, this gentleman's question about how can we help. If you speak English, you could help. Talk to me. I've been teaching English as a second language here for 11 years. Refugees and immigrants. I got over 50 students who are citizens of the United States now, but there's some organizations where you don't have to give your social security number and ID, which is very critical in this time of fear. Why? Because I had a student 7 years ago who was online and ICE shows up at their house. So we can help people who are going to live here learn English in a safe way.
Okay, I think this woman down here has been waiting quite a while.
get my steps in.
Hi, I'm Barb and appreciate all of you, and know most of you. The response in Chicago I'm familiar with because my daughter lives in the neighborhood northwest in a Chicago neighborhood, and they are forming quote club weekly meetings. So in neighborhoods that have proximity to a lot of people at risk, they have organizing meetings. And I think those of you that have proximity to a large concentration of immigrants, which is really anyone that is a person of color, you're at risk of getting picked up. And consequently, they organize, you've heard of the whistles, and when ICE is seen in the neighborhood, everybody's got whistles that they blow. They have people that are organized to walk kids to school. So those of us that are majority Anglo people, we have the responsibility here because it's too risky for so many other people that are at risk.
Okay, the gentleman at the back, I believe, is next.
Yeah. My name's Mac.
It's not on.
My name's Mac, and I'm loosely associated with Indivisible, and several of my friends in that organization. I'm kind of off the record. I've been trying to write a pamphlet that would be useful to someone who might be a victim of ISIS, what they should and shouldn't do. And I was assigned the first thing, which is how do you identify someone as being ICE? And so far as I can tell, the only real identifications are a mask and some sort of a firearm, which also identifies bank robbers and all variety of other people. In other words, when that poor woman who the idiots broke her car windows, came in and pulled them out, here in 1955, and I used to have a concealed carry permit, I might have stopped right there and threatened those people, but leave that person alone. And I'll bet 100 to 1 the sheriff would have reprimanded me for being so frisky, but would not have charged me for anything. I wonder what people can do with these unidentified banditos who pull them over.
So we also have that concern because we don't know who's who, and that's not a good thing in law enforcement. And there have been a few times where we have gotten reports of impersonation and where we have had to call the field office to figure out if we could even try to verify. And interestingly enough, I think sometimes the people at the top and their side don't know what their folks on the ground are doing. It is really unfortunate. I know a lot of officials were fighting for the ban on the masks, so they would have to identify themselves. I think that it is really important. We have told them that if they wear masks in Washtenaw County and operate like this, if someone calls 911 and doesn't know if they're them, we will respond to figure out who they are. And we have adamantly told them not to. Of course, they don't have to listen to us, and I know that there have been times that they won't, and there's times that they will. And so I would say if there's a situation where you see that and they are talking to you or someone else, you can call and we can then attempt to verify. And if we have to respond to demand to see their credentials, it is really unfortunate. I mean, it is, and you're not wrong, as law enforcement, when we see somebody with a face mask like what they're wearing and a gun and plain clothes, no credentials, we're thinking they're up to no good. And that is what we're seeing now with federal officers. So it is very unfortunate. I know a lot of law enforcement that I've talked to are also very uncomfortable with this reality as well. So those are some suggestions. I think asking for credentials, and obviously you don't want to ever put yourself in jeopardy. You don't want to touch any officer or ICE or try to escalate. You want to be careful, but people need to ask for their credentials if they feel they have the privilege to do that. And so I think that is really important as well.
There's a handout, you might have seen it when you came in, with immigrant rights that talks about what immigrants, how they should respond, how they don't have to answer, and so forth. So if you didn't get one when you came in, you might want to pick it up on the way out. We have a limited number there. Now, there was somebody in the back, yes, there.
So, I wanted
Oh,
to
I'm sorry.
just add
Go ahead.
something. So the WICIR urgent response line is not just for the impacted community to call in and ask for assistance. If you see any agency in the neighborhood, in the area, especially in Ypsilanti is where they've been focusing lately, but anywhere, it can be ICE, it can be CBP, it can be the FBI, the DEA, the HSI, or they can just have a black vest that says police, but they're in an unmarked car and they seem to be just lingering around doing nothing. We don't know who these people are. We do know some of their license plate numbers, so you can contact WICIR and say, hey, this is going on in this area. There are response teams that can kind of poke around, see what's going on. Maybe we recognize the cars, maybe we don't. It's Halloween time too, and people can go out and just buy these things. And a lot of my clients, especially the females, have been expressing the same kinds of concerns. They don't know who these people are, and they say, well, the worst thing that could happen to me, I guess, is if I get detained, but what if it's not even ICE and they try to kidnap me, like kidnap me to do something even worse to me? So you can reach out, send a text to WICIR, call WICIR and say, hey, we're seeing this in this area, and people can go around and see what's going on.
So how would people access your phone number so they would be able to text you or call you?
So I will say that just to put out there, we're all volunteer run. So if you call and you don't get an answer, feel free to leave a message. We receive texts as well. And our number is, I always get the last four numbers mixed up, so I don't want to give anything out wrong. But you can always go to wicir.org, but our number is 734-355, and thank you very much. So I don't get the last part wrong. 2707. I always want to inverse the numbers. 355-2707, and that's 734. I just want to add one more thing to what Cecily said. There's a general acronym, SALUTE. If you think about it, when you call, SALUTE is for reporting. SALUTE is size, like how many agents are there, because they rarely ever just come one or two. I know the guys I know that were together, 3 of them the other day, it was 8 agents together for 3 pretty, first of all, I would say none of them are criminals, pretty docile guys. So size, U is for uniform, L is location, I'm sorry, A is for action, what are they doing, and T is for, I think, for tactical, and I'm missing E. But you can look up SALUTE and get all those pieces, but just the amount of information you can give is important, so we know what we're looking for. If they're undercover and what T, I'm sorry, is for transportation. What kind of cars they're driving, and again, we have records of some cars that are used on a regular basis, so we're able to know, and the community knows. They say, oh, there's the such and such car that we saw last week, and there's pictures that go around, so people are starting to become somewhat familiar.
So going to your website is a good way to get all this information. Okay, now, yes, ma'am, back there. Do you have mic? Okay, good.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to thank
You have to hold it up like this, so you.
Like this?
Yeah.
First of all, my name is Kathleen, and I'm a resident of Ann Arbor. And I'd like to thank the people who spoke today. It's just extremely informative.
You have to keep it up, ma'am, like just like that. Yeah.
And it's also a little bit horrifying. And part of me, you've given some answers to people who ask about what people can do, and those are very fine answers. But I want to know just politically, it just seems like there ought to be some kind of organized force against these things that are impacting so many of our lives and so many lives that a lot of us don't see. And I was wondering what you can suggest, or other people can suggest, as political avenues were taking on this issue in a way that would make a difference.
Commissioner? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, thank you. I just, I'm discovering myself how much of the information that is released by what I often think of as a credible source for information is total propaganda, and I didn't know. So I would encourage, especially in Ann Arbor with such a highly educated population, just not taking things at face value, even if it's from an organization or an agency or institute that you have deemed to be a credible organization in the past. Particularly right now, the Department of State's human rights reports are being weaponized against people from Venezuela and other countries, including South Sudan, Yemen, and Haiti. So I think that that's one thing that we can do with our voices, is making sure that any information that we share is coming from a source that is not spreading propaganda.
Commissioner?
I fully agree, and I guess I'd also say I think a lot of people, if you asked them in November of 2024, they would have said, well, you know, they're going after the worst of the worst, or whatever the campaign rhetoric is. I would talk to all the people in your lives, I certainly do, to remind them these real actions are the outcomes of the votes that were made and were not made in 2024. And so I would just beat that drum ad nauseum. The only way we're going to get over this is to get through it first. And so we've got to kind of cling on until 2026 and start kind of fighting our way back from that. That's my best advice.
Okay, we have another question.
I just have a quick question.
Excuse me, ma'am, have you spoken already?
No.
Okay, and
What do the sheriffs?
we can't hear you.
What do the sheriffs normally wear?
So sheriffs normally wear something that says sheriff. So our
Thank goodness.
so all black uniforms, black 511 pants, black shirt with gold badges, and they'll say Washtenaw County Sheriff. They have vests. The vests on the back will say sheriff. The cars say sheriff. Now we do have detectives that will wear at times their vest with business clothes, and we've actually had some issues there because since they're detectives, they're not as full uniform, but there's something that says sheriff, and all of my employees know they're supposed to have all their credentials showing. If they're in uniform, obviously they're in the uniform. And if you see any fully uniformed officer, 9 times out of 10, this is local police. If you see someone wearing complete plain clothes and a gun on their hip with no credentials, that is a red flag, and normally that would be ICE. There are times that you'll also see local or FBI, and FBI is different than HSI, but it gets very confusing because, again, the national agenda, they basically told many federal agents they are to be helping out with this agenda, so it gets really complicated. But the best rule of thumb is if you see someone fully uniformed with a badge, 9 times out of 10 it's local police. Also, people can call dispatch. So the Washtenaw County dispatch number, 734-994-2911. If you have an officer that's at your door or looking to speak with you and you are not sure if this is truly the local police, you can verify with dispatch that dispatch number if that person is in fact a local police officer.
Would you repeat that number, please?
734-994-2911.
Okay.
I just want to add one thing real quick, but at the risk of being redundant. Just think about the questions we've been getting today from you all, and this isn't any, I'm not saying anything bad here. I'm glad you're asking those questions. But just imagine you all have lived in the Washtenaw County, you drive around, you all have very much different privilege than a lot of the people I know, and you all don't necessarily know what Washtenaw County Sheriff looks like or wears. So I just want to put that out there, like the level of fear that my friends are driving with every day.
Was there somebody over here that had a question? Yes, Carolyn?
Well, I wanted to
Oh, we
ask-
need the mic.
So I know that some people from UU congregation went up to Baldwin with a larger group, and I'm wondering if that's a viable thing. Baldwin is just a private prison, and I don't know, you could say anything about that, or WICIR, I don't know whether or not that's still going on, whether they're trying to encourage people to go up there to protest what's going on, not just what's going on, but how they're treated in there as well.
Yes, I do think individuals from UUA did go, but kind of in their own capacities, not in any kind of organized group. And that is something that is ongoing. And I think that there are various groups in Ann Arbor that are planning smaller trips, but there are bigger events going on up there. I kind of see it from both sides that it could be beneficial, but I see it from a different perspective as well, because I have clients that are there right now. And once the crowd gets so big, they can't come to their calls anymore. And they don't get their visitors. And those protests will be on a Saturday, and Saturday is visitation day. And so I understand why people do that. I'm not saying that it's wrong, but I would encourage people to think about, is it powerful enough to cause that kind of commotion for the people that are there? And if it gets too big, are they going to move them all somewhere else? And is my girl going to have another hearing in Louisiana 6 months from now? You know what I mean? So I just don't think it's as clean of a decision to make to say, I'm going to go up there and protest with 500 people, because I don't know what's going to happen. And are they going to weaponize that against my clients? That's my personal perspective on it. And I think there are other reasonable and rational opinions about it as well that I respect.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Hi, I have a couple of questions. The first is, if people could say their organization, slowly spell out WICIR so we can find you easily. Just spell out the initials, spell out your organization so we can look you up. And then the second question, it's good to see you, Sheriff Dyer. I was just wondering, I was a little late to this and I don't really know, but can you speak to what your jurisdiction is in relation to ICE, and if you're able to, if they're doing things that are illegal, are the deputies able to step in, and do you have any jurisdiction?
So we have police jurisdiction in Washtenaw County, and we also do contract policing. So there are some areas where you see Ann Arbor police, for example. We don't serve Ann Arbor. Not that we don't have jurisdiction, they police Ann Arbor. So there's sheriff's office jurisdictions across the county. Ypsilanti Township being one of our biggest jurisdictions, but Ypsilanti City is Ypsilanti Police. So this police jurisdiction locally is confusing. And because I've had people ask, can the sheriff go here and do this when it's another police agency? So then we are able to refer to that police agency. When it comes to the federal jurisdiction with immigration, we cannot obstruct what they are doing unless we can prove and see that they are breaking a law. I will give you one example, and it's a very gray area. Like I said, building the plane while we're flying. You've seen in Chicago some local police being extremely frustrated because ICE has tried to get through somewhere where the police are not wanting them to go, and they're getting into back and forth, right? And it becomes a whose authority. We have authority over policing in Washtenaw County when it comes to 911 calls, dispatch, etc. They have authority with civil immigration law. So when they are in Washtenaw County, they do not have the authority to basically respond to police criminal matters that we would handle day to day. What they are here for, if they were enforcing civil immigration law, that is where their authority kicks in. There was a situation in another county where somebody in our community was a citizen and they saw him. I think they assumed that he was undocumented because he was Latino, and they ended up throwing him on the ground and detaining him, and then later find out that he's a citizen and they release him. My argument there is that is assault. it is very, very tricky on what the local police can and can't do. And if they are going to, let's say they start doing that with people that are citizens, it's much easier for us to make the case that they are outside their authority and that is assault. When, unfortunately, if they detain or use excessive force on somebody that is undocumented, that they can prove they have lawful authority to make the detainment, I argue they're still violating law. You can't just beat people up or throw people on the ground. But there's also other accountability measures that have to be enacted to hold that part accountable. So it's a very wishy-washy way to say there's not a clear, definitive answer on what local police could do in those situations. And I think, again, following what Chicago is doing is really important. There's judges that have issued court orders saying they can't come to courthouses. So that gives the local police then authority to say you can't come to this courthouse. And so we really need to look from a law standpoint. That's where we get our authority, from Michigan law. On the flip side, in Florida, they passed a law trying to mandate police help ICE. We don't have that in Michigan. So there's nothing requiring us to do that. So that's on the flip side. They're also using law in that way. So it's a very complicated answer, but I think the short of it is if it ever got to a point in Washtenaw County where we're seeing that happen, where people are being thrown on the ground, where there's excessive force, I am not opposed to responding and documenting the situation.
Yes,
I was just going to answer the first part of that question.
Okay.
For the confusion about WICIR, is Washtenaw Immigration Coalition for Immigrant, Washtenaw Interfaith Coalition for Immigrant Rights, WICIR.org. And also Michigan Immigrant Rights Center is MIRC, MIRC.
thank you.
My name is Shelley, and I'm just wondering, is there somebody here tonight from like the Ann Arbor News or MLive?
MLive, she identified herself, she's back
All
there.
right, I mean, I was just sitting here listening to this, and I haven't seen any really good article in any local news source about the extent of what is going on, so I'm glad there's somebody here.
So, thank you for coming. Yes, Greg, did you ever?
Hi, obviously I'm videoing this for the league. I'm a member of the league. If there's anybody who in the audience who has spoken up or asked a question and you would like not to be in the video, please see me at the end. I can take care of it.
Okay, thank you, Greg. We appreciate your help. Okay, we have time for one more question, I think. Are there any? Right here. Mary Ann, you're getting your workout today.
So this question.
Could you stand up, please, so we can be sure to hear you? It's on. Just hold it up so that you're talking to the end of it.
Can you hear me?
There.
So this question broadens out a little bit. That I was concerned a little bit about SNAP, and I had read that 13% of our population in Washtenaw County are SNAP recipients. And then if you add immigrants to that, who, I don't know if they would be SNAP recipients or not, can you give us an idea from a food perspective, from a being able to feed and live perspective, what percentage of our population in this county is going to be affected by these two things?
I can give you a general answer, and I can double check that with staff, but I think roughly we're in line with the nation. There are more than 40 million people that depend on SNAP in some way, shape, or form. And so that's a pretty massive number, and as a percentage-wise, we're roughly in the same. We don't know what will happen with SNAP, and we're already in a food insecure environment. We had to allocate $500,000 out of senior funds back in July to food gatherers just because that need is existing, and along with sort of the downturn that's happening in the economy, I suspect that number will grow. But I can double check with public health on what the specific number is, but it's roughly in line with the national average.
I think if you had the two communities, you know.
Oh, go ahead, Ms. Ryan.
I was just going to say, unfortunately, I don't have any numbers per se. I was just going to reiterate the fact that I think a lot of people think of my experience with some conversations that I've had with people in Washtenaw County, say, you know, I don't know how many immigrants I really know, or I don't know how many undocumented people I really know. There's a lot of mixed status families in Washtenaw County. So mixed status family is a citizen or a resident, someone who has privilege with the papers that this government wants them to have, and then their spouse, partner, family member is undocumented, or differently documented, has the documents that their home country wants them to have. So we do have a lot of mixed status families that will be affected by that as well. But I don't have the specific numbers for you.
Okay, we're gonna have to go on. Catherine?
Can I add an answer on there?
Yes.
Okay, just quickly, we generally, undocumented individuals do not qualify for public benefits. And you may consider, you know, well, why don't they could go to food banks, we can refer people to food banks. Not all social services in the community that may be like a charity kind of agencies will provide their services, whether it be clothing or food, without having your name, address, and social security number. And so a lot of individuals are too fearful to give their name or their address. That's why a lot of individuals in my church, for example, and people at WICIR, were getting requests, I don't have food, can you help me? My husband was deported last week, we ran out of food, I've got 5 kids at home. So these kinds of anonymous services are really helpful, or services that allow you to just make up a name. We have a person, we call him Blue's Clues, and we go to the, I don't know why, he likes to wear blue, I think he wears blue when we see him, so we call him Blue's Clues. We just make up names, it can be Blue's Clues, it can be, you know, whatever we come up with at that time. But just to give you an idea of food scarcity in the immigrant community. Now I'm a lawyer, I'm not a nonprofit, and I have to charge money for my services, and it's not cheap. And most of the people on my social media that I have are my clients. And I posted the other day, someone had some food to donate. I posted, hey, I've got this amount of food available, is anybody interested? I didn't think anyone would say anything. Within 3 minutes, 3 of my clients said, yes, I need food. These are people that have to pay me thousands of dollars for their legal services that responded immediately saying, yes, I need food. So that tells me that they're having to go without to pay to be here, to pay to stay here. And that felt really, really sad that day. It's a wide awakening that it's a huge issue, and I don't think we'll ever have numbers on something like that.
I'd like to give a grateful thank you to our panelists tonight. Thank you, everyone, for your concern and your interest for coming tonight. I just wanted to remind people that there is a sign-up sheet to receive the WICIR newsletter, which seems like a great place to start for people who are wanting to do more. Just a reminder that please vote on November 4th for whatever's on your ballot. Good practice for 2026. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you so much for having us. We get to keep the pens. I love it, we have pens.